You guys here to spot number 4. We're gonna fish this spot too, so if we catch some fish, do pretty good. The video will be after that. You guys will get to see this. Here's this spot, guys. There is a ton to talk about here. We've got different depths to talk about. We've got structure to talk about. We're on points. This is an island, so we're surrounded by water. Right around here, starting on depth first, it's really shallow. So you guys have seen in some of the other videos a lot of shad been caught back in there. The one video on how I catch a catfish from start to finish, I caught all those shad back in there. So if you guys want to see that video, I'll leave a link up here in the description or up in the top, and you guys can check that out. So we got really shallow back in here, and then as we come through here, we kind of start dropping off. Drops off until we get to the point where we got a lot of these poles thrown out. And what it does when it gets to this point is where it dropped off at, it picks up really quickly and creates just a small flat, about 15-20 foot wide, and it goes out pretty far, and then it drops off again directly onto the other side. So looking back here, we have shallow towards a slow decline drop, really slow, and then we get right here, it humps up really fast, stays flat, and gets really deep again. So the depth we're talking about back in here is about 10 to 15 feet until you get way back in there, and then it's only about 5 feet deep. So you start coming around in here and you get close to 20 foot before you get to that hump where it creates that little point right there, and it pumps up to about 15 feet, so it jumps up 5 feet really fast. And then on the other side of this point over here, as we get over to it actually drops off really fast, probably about 50 foot deep. So right here we'd be looking directly at the point, and then over here drops off insanely fast, about 50 foot deep, and it stays that way because we get back out into the main river channel here. So we're kind of in some backwaters, and then over here we get into the main river and the lake section. So we've kind of come off of it a little bit to get back in here to where these cats are going to move up on us of a night. So why do they want to move up here? For one, we got all that depth change. There's a lot of bait that kind of stays up on this point. We've got a ton of bait back in there, and you've got a lot of structure. So as we look at the bank here, there's a ton of rocks, and you're going to get hung up a lot. Well, you got hung up a lot. In the live stream you guys seen, there was a ton of action here. We couldn't even hardly do the giveaway because we was catching fish after fish. Here we had a good wind that day too, but we did get hung up a ton in trying to get those fish in. We did land some of those fish, some of those we didn't land. So that's going to happen when you look at spots like this. So you look at all these rocks here, and this continues out in the water. Let me step over here and I'll kind of show you guys how it goes out into the water. So you guys can see out in the water, you're still getting those rocks, and it kind of stays that way. A lot of these rocks have some undercut. We did a kind of a post or a pre-spawn fishing video here. We caught a ton of fish here. And what we did was we wanted to see how close these catfish would come to the bank. So the best way that we found to do that was to set limb lines. If you want to see that video, I'll leave it up there as well. There was a ton of fish caught there, a lot of big flatheads, some nice blues caught. But I'll pull over here and kind of show you guys why we decided to try to set it up here. When we talk about these undercut rocks, that give them a good place to spawn at. Always a good place for these cats, just kind of get off the main river out there and just kind of take a break, hunker down. So as we get down here, you guys can see how these rocks do. Now we have a ton of laydowns over here too. The further you get around in there, there's a ton of trees in there. You're gonna get hung up a ton if you try to cast over there. It's almost not even worth it to cast that far over there. But right in here, you got all these undercut rocks for these cats to come up in. There's some bait fish up in here. Not a ton of bait fish over in this area because where it's so deep, but they do get up in these rocks, especially the bluegill and stuff. And that's why there's a lot of flatheads in this type of area. So if you're looking for a good flathead spot, especially a spot like this where you can find a lot of rocks, a lot of places for these cats just kind of hang out in and wait for these bluegill to come up in here. They ain't got to do a lot of work because when those bluegill come up in here, they're already waiting on them. So kind of want to get set up and get positioned in some of these places out here. Now we're casting a little bit deep right now. It's still daylight. As it gets a little darker, we'll probably pull some of these poles in a little closer, because we know from that other video that there are a ton of cats really close to the bank. So we've got the structure, we got depth, and you're getting a bite over there. Your very last pole. I don't know if you guys seen that or not, but I can see that line over there raising up. There, see it moving? You just let go of it. So he's getting a bite over there. He just picked it up there. But there's a ton of depth change here. Like I said, we got shallow, we got some slow drops, we got some steep drops, some really deep water, and then we got a ton of structure here. And then we've got, like I said, this undercut rock here for these bluegill and stuff to hang out in. There's not a ton of casting room here. I'll kind of show you guys what the bank itself looks like when we get up here. It's surrounded by pine trees, so you gotta kind of gotta pick a little clearing in, like where I got those poles at. You gotta pick little clearing spots to be able to cast. There's a little clearing spot right there. There's a little clear spot right there for that pole, and then over there where he's at, and of course this spot here. That's about it. So there's not a lot of options on where you can cast, but we kind of spread out across this island here on this point and trying to figure out where these fish are. So far most of them seem like they're coming deep. I've had a hit here, hooked up on it, and he got loose, and then there was one that took off running here. We didn't make it in time, it quit, and now he's getting a bite. So everything seems to be deep right now as far as it being daylight. Again, that may change, and we may pull up later into the night. We may pull them a lot closer to the bank, and we'll see what happens there. If you pull up to a spot and you see all these rocks all over the bank like this, and you're going to know that that continues out into the water, so there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be in some good cover there for them flatheads. If you can see the depth, and you can see a lot of depth change, you can get into some blues like that, especially out there in that deeper water. So I hope you guys like this spot, and we will see you in the next one.